I'm just going to make a point, though, right now. This is not a slow burn. Inej and Kaz are advertised as, like, the best slow burn on the market. A slow burn is where they start as, like, friends who don't have feelings for each other, and you get to watch each other fall in love. They already like each other at the start of this. Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of your favorite podcast. It's Unresolved Textual Tension. Today, I have with me my not ruggedly handsome, my handsome bitches, Katie and William, and I am your host, Maria.
Hey guys, what's up? What book are we doing today, Katie?
We are doing Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo.
And this is our third or fourth book of hers we read. It's fourth for us and third for you. We'd read Ninth House, which we thought was like good, but kind of weird and not great in certain ways.
I forgot that was written by her.
Same person. Isn't it mind-blowing? Isn't it mind-blowing?
Honestly, that only further like, none of it's like a perfect gem, but it's like really impressive, honestly.
Yeah, the ending just was a mess.
Well, this book and that one have made me realize that Leigh Bardugo is a very talented but not a very competent writer. Usually it's the other way around. People who aren't good writers can be very competent in their writing, but in this case it's switched around and she's not getting better. She's just getting worse, if anything.
I would argue that heavily.
No, Ninth House was after this, and I would say it's better.
I would say, though, structurally speaking, it's a better book, but I would say in terms of the skill versus competence dichotomy I was talking about, I think the plotting in that book also has a lot of issues in the format of it.
So you think the competence of that one is worse than this one?
Yes.
Oh, that's a claim. That's a claim. You're going to have to support that claim, William.
Oh, there shall be Russian pistolas, don't worry.
Okay, both of you guys. No, but specifically, I think this book is better than Ninth House. I think Ninth House ideas are really fresh and amazing, and they're really cool things, but it's not fully formed. And I think freaking Shadow and Bone could just go live in a dumpster. But, like, but no, this book was stellar.
Leigh bad?
I knew this was going to happen.
Let me really quick. I don't think this book is bad. I'm going to say that outright. I think it goes into the fine category. We have read, like, it's not Shadow and Bone. It's not Iron Flame or that ilk. It's not ACOTAR. I would say it is better than all of those, and I would put it in the fine category. For me, this would be a beach read, like, where you just need to turn your brain off. You don't think too hard. You don't, like, that's where it feels for me.
Not even remotely how I feel about it. But, like, I mean, sure, I guess it could be a beach read. That's fine, too. But I wouldn't categorize it that way.
Here's what we got to do. We got to change it then so it's like this. So we have person who disliked it the most, person who second most disliked it, and then Maria, you have to point towards Katie. Nope, other way.
Oh, sorry, I'm reversed. So
and
right now, I'm pointing at you.
Will, you're still, like, pointing in the wrong direction.
And then Katie is the person who liked it the most. So we have a spectrum. Does anybody want to look up what Russian for pistolas is? Valerie says, Maria center stage where she belongs. That's a good point.
Thanks, guys. Well, fuck you.
Oh, actually, there we go. That's better. Let's see. I got the left hand and the right hand. Anyway, getting back to the actual book. Katie really liked it. Maria thought it was fine. I actually also mostly thought it was fine. I have trouble figuring out what it is that I think this book does poorly, but I know that it does a lot poorly.
Well, maybe we can figure it out through discussion.
For sure. And that's the feeling I got from a lot of the patrons on Discord when they were talking about it, is they were just like unfulfilled by it, and I feel like that's almost the best way to describe it. And that's again why I think Leigh Bardugo is a very talented writer, in that she can write these characters, but she's not very good at like making them likable. She's good at making them likable, but she's not actually good at like doing a character arc or telling them in a way. And then there's certain characters who I just fucking hate, and 3 guesses who that is, and I think everyone can immediately.
Wait. Kaz?
Of course it's Kaz. Of course he hates Kaz.
Bitchy boy? Yeah. No,
listen, there has only been one male character that has been the opposite.
There are biases happening in this. Everyone, there is a bias happening. Because Kaz is a stellar character, in my opinion.
Well, and that's the thing is...
Oh, they call you the Lonely Island because you're on one alone in the middle of the Pacific.
I don't think he's as bad as you do, Will. I did in the beginning, but it mellowed out for me. Like, the way the narrative spoke about him.
No, I actually quite like him. And also, like, I'm gonna be honest, like Maria, I feel like maybe we'll agree, because you haven't really explained your points yet, so I'm a little iffy on stating this for you. But I feel like you guys are sleeping on this. So again, Maria, like, keep in mind what I just qualified that with. But I feel like you're sleeping on this. Like, this was a really, there's an issue with it. Specifically in a very specific 2 places where I'm like, this ruined it for me a little. And so, but besides that, I really liked this book.
Again, one of the things about this podcast is I learn things about my friends.
Hey, I like,
okay, no.
Somebody's comment one time was like, Katie sees the gem in all the rough stuff. And I think that's true in this case then, I guess, if like we have varying degrees of this opinion.
We have all been the island. Will and I read Dune, and I read that to filth, you know? And Will loves it as a book, you know? So, like, I didn't actually read it to filth, but I had major problems with it.
The claim here is that Six of Crows is a great book, and my claim is that it is a trash book.
I think it's a fine book. I think you're both wrong.
Maria, I think you and I are probably closer than you just qualified us as. It's because it's not a book that I'll reread, and it's not a book that, like, will even go in my top 10. But it has a special place in my heart. It's because I had a lot of fun reading it.
Would you say it's a great book, a good book, a fine book, or a bad
good book?
For me, it goes right in the median. Like that middle.
I would say it's lukewarm, edging on soggy.
I think the writing skill in this is spectacular in some places. I think...
Yeah, it's not Divine Rivals. It's not Divine Rivals.
The perspective changes, I don't like perspective changes on the best of days, and the perspective changes in this actually show why you should use perspective changes.
Oh, see, that's one of the things. I think there's too many perspectives. Now, I do like perspective changes, and I'm going to make an argument that this book should have been told just from 2 characters alternating POVs. I think that's all you needed.
I think we should have cut fucking Matthias. Cut Matthias. Cut...
Katie.
Matthias has the most stakes and connection to this story than anyone else does. As far as for being on this mission, he has the most stakes compared to and connection.
I don't care about stakes. I don't think she wrote him well.
Oh, well, I think she was rather unnuanced in that she can't really do world building, so she can't really get into other people's, like, mind states or different cultures.
I think she did great world building in this book.
Before we start, by the way, above, Thea had said that the Russian word for pistols is pishtov. So, guys, get ready for pishtovas. Let's go ahead and say what the basic premise is. Do you want to do the honors, Katie?
We are once again revisiting the world of Shadow and Bone. We have a completely new city. Completely almost. Well, yeah, unless Nina's mentioned.
It's a completely different country.
It's a completely different space. If you've seen the TV show, the railroad people. We are in the city of Ketterdam, which I kind of get the vibe is like steampunky Victorian, because we have guns, we have like Peaky Blinders gangs and stuff like that.
It's very ragamuffin-y kind of a sound. I was
No. Shut your mouth. That hurt me.
Anyway, so we are in Ketterdam, that kind of city, with our main character, Kaz Brecker, who is basically, just think Peaky Blinders. And he has a crew called the Dredgers.
Dregs.
This is a heist book where he takes a lot of characters from a lot of different places, including from Ravka from Shadow and Bone. And it's like a hodgepodge gang of, you know, like misfits. And they all bring together and we get little like flashbacks on where their origins were. And they go out on a heist to steal this little shoe boy. Basically, he's Asian. And of some sort. It's not specified. And they go to save this shoe boy. Well, that's the twist. But anyway, for this drug recipe that everyone wants their hands on because it makes Grisha, the really powerful people with like avatar powers. And it's not just elemental, but I guess it is elemental, huh? Are Grisha from everywhere? Or is that just their name? I got a little confused.
So Grisha you can be from everywhere, but it has to come from certain bloodlines. Like, for instance, when we find out Jesper spoiler warning, is a Grisha. He got it from his mother's side. That
that's right.
let him get it. So it's not super common outside of Ravka, but you can have Grisha that are not from Ravka. But they're just called Grisha. Like, individual countries don't have their own names for them. They just call them Grisha.
The point is, though, is that this hodgepodge group goes to steal a person who knows the recipe for a drug that makes those people's powers really, really awesome. But then, like, craziness ensues in heist, issues. Things go wrong. They have to adapt. Friendships are put on the line. That kind of thing. I think that's the vague gist of the book.
One thing I want to talk about is the TV show. And because it did kind of define in certain ways how I engaged with the text.
Oh, really?
So in two main ways. One, I think the actors bring a lot of life to the characters that they don't have in the book. I'm going to assume Katie is going to disagree. I actually liked the characters in the TV show a lot more than I liked the book ones, except for Matthias, who I liked a lot more in the book than I did in the TV show. And the other thing is that we should just get out of the way that all these characters who are hardened criminals with tragic backstories and hypercompetence
are 17.
Right. And so I just imagined them the age of the characters, the actors in the show. And I kind of think that's what you're supposed to do, because nobody treats them really until like the very end of the book like they're children. Apparently, Leigh Bardugo had wanted to write a heist, like an adult heist. And her publishers were like, nah, fantasy is where it's at right now. So she just aged everyone down. And one of the ways you can tell is not only because they have all this informed badassness, but also because otherwise Nina, who is a very classic femme fatale and is highly sexualized in the book, is canonically 17. Like, let that sink in for a moment, those who have read it, how, like, creepy that would be if we were actually supposed to think she was 17. So I think basically for everyone involved, it's just best if we all pretend that they were an older age.
You are approaching this from a I don't know, I just didn't view it through that lens. Like, I understand what you're talking about, and that makes sense. I didn't view it through that lens at all.
Well, I think all he's saying is Leigh Bardugo isn't expecting you to think of her as 17. The idea is that...
I get what you're saying. Yes, yes.
These characters should all be like 23. Like that's
24, maybe one to 27.
Like Matthias should be like 23. Kaz should really be like 25.
I mean, if we had wanted to get you and Marie on board with Matthias, he should be like 45. But whatever, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I was gonna age him up a whole lot more originally, but then I was like, oh wait, he's a young Druskella.
No, and like it's again, I think it's just best for everyone involved if we just assume.
So we're just gonna talk about them, like, and the thing is, because like they're not gonna act like teenagers, they're not gonna engage with the world. They have too much life for.
Well, their tragic backstory happened like a year ago. They act like it's a long time ago, and it's like, you are 17. There's not that much time for this to have happened.
It does not come off at all throughout the novel as if they're actually that age. I'm fine with it being said that they are. It's because a lot can happen in those young years, especially in a shitty place, in a shitty town. But like, there are certainly many people I've met who have gone through entire lifetimes of experience in that amount. So it's like forgivable or whatever. But it is, now that you're pointing it out, kind of funny.
But like nobody treats them like kids. Like nobody is like, what are these children doing here?
It comes up a couple of times in some places. But I understand what you're getting at.
Just age them up. They were aged up in the show. Like, I'm pretty sure all the characters were aged up in the show, or at least played by actors, and they didn't talk. I can't remember if they talked about ages in the show, but like the vibe is we're not dealing with like a gaggle of 17-year-olds who like are all 17. I think one of them is like 16. Like, it's not they were like, we have a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, and then like the youngest one, Inej, is 17. You know, like none of that.
No, although the whole time Jesper was like making fun of Wylan, and it's like, oh, your baby face. And it's like, he's a year younger. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's so funny. So that's just not an angle of criticism we're gonna really engage in.
No.
We're
mentioning it now, and we're just not gonna we're gonna leave it as is.
Okay, so Katie made a lot of faces when I was talking about how I liked the actors more than the characters, and I thought they brought a lot of charisma to it. So let's return to that. Katie, what are your thoughts?
I thought the show... I don't know. It was just, there was nothing special. It was so not good.
Real quick, because I think I'm on the same page as you, but I'm also a little bit on the same page as well. The story of the Ketterdam crew and the crows in the show was just garbage. Like, they were being shoved into a story they shouldn't have been. Their story had no stakes because they shouldn't have been there.
Oh, if we're talking about Six of Crows exclusively, certainly. I mean, I don't like the whole show.
No. He is talking specifically that he liked the actors for the crows better than their book counterparts. And I'm gonna agree. I liked Kaz's actor.
I don't think I watched enough of it. So if there's more to this than that, then I definitely have missed out. But I only watched up to the point where they made it on the other side of the darkness in the train.
then you missed stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Then you can't talk to me about it then.
Yeah. So I liked Kaz better in the show, especially versus beginning book Kaz, because Kaz in the show just was super practical and less of like, I'm the best bitch in Ketterdam, and more of just like, I'm bad, but nobody else, like, nobody needs to know how, like, there was just, like, this quiet confidence about him in the show, like, more akin to that guy from Scorpio Races.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with you. It's because I got that vibe from the beginning, too, but I think that's more, like, I mean, I guess you could really get nitpicky and, like, argue the difference between this, but personally, in my mind, that's more of Leigh Bardugo's narrative thing, not, like, being a little heavy-handed versus the actual character himself within the story itself.
They fundamentally change his character the most, but other characters who I feel like are supposed to be charming in the book are actually charming on the show, like the Jasper. On the show, he's just played by a really fun actor. You know what I mean? Like, he's just
great.
fun.
That's who I was picturing the whole time.
Yeah, it's kind of like how Gideon the Ninth is really good, but the voice actress brings a lot of small subtleties to the character through the voices she does for them. I felt like that for the characters, and then Kaz is the only character. Well, Kaz and Nina a little bit, but mostly Kaz is the one who I feel is like a very different character on the show, and I liked that character so much more than this Kaz Brecker. I'm trying to come up with a good pun on his name that demeans him, but I haven't come up with it yet.
I like
Guys
his character
in the chat,
in the book,
if you think of one, help me out.
I, in the beginning, was not a fan of Kaz because the book was just going too hard on how cool he was and how bad he was. But then once the actual plot got started, it simmered down on that, and it just focused more on Kaz's introspection, and I was much more okay with that. So I'm gonna say right now, I do not think Kaz is as terrible as Will does. I don't. I think he gets better as the book goes on, and I think there are some interesting things he has to deal with. I'm just going to make a point, though, right now. This is not a slow burn unless we are talking about Jesper and Wylan. All the people who promised me a slow burn. No, here's the reason why it's advertised. No, it's Inej and Kaz are advertised as like the best slow burn on the market because they don't actually get together. It's not. A slow burn is where they start as like friends who don't have feelings for each other and you get to watch each other fall in love. They already like each other at the start of this.
Out of all the relationships offered to us in this, my favorite one was Jesper and Wylan. Although, that was hardcore slow burn. No, but I really like Kaz, period. I view it a little differently. It's like the art from the artist type of thing. I feel like that she has a lot of problems throughout the entire book where she's very repetitive in certain narrative functions, and she keeps repeating character qualities, and it gets really sick and tiring, especially around when they're in the prison, once they're in the prison. But prior to that, it was vaguely forgivable for a hot second, and so that's why the beginning doesn't bother me. It's because I'm just kind of like, whatever. It's like, it doesn't bother me enough personally. But as the book went on, I'm like, oh, for the love of God, please stop. It's the same problem as in the book that wouldn't burn, except for not as bad, actually.
It's not as bad as that.
Yeah, it's not as bad as that one, because that would go on for pages. But I don't need to be, I don't need again, an anime recap of each character's background each time I go to their perspective.
Our main cast of crew is Kaz Brecker. Like Katie said, he's the lieutenant of a prominent gang in Ketterdam. He's had a heckin' hard go of it. They all have, except for Jesper. Jesper's the only one who has made his fate. But he's had a heckin' hard go of it. His brother, dead. His fortune that they got from the sale of his father's farm, taken from him. His brother died of a terrible thing, and he was on a corpse barge for a while, and now he can't touch people and has problems letting people near him, and he has hardened himself into a criminal mastermind. That's Kaz. And he also has a crush on this girl named Inej. Second character, Inej, the girl that I mentioned that was sold into child prostitution. She was taken from her family, who were a troupe of acrobats and performers that traveled the Rovkin countryside. She was stolen by people, and now and then she worked at a pleasure house for, like, a little bit, which was real rough. She didn't like it, and then Kaz was like, you move so silently, I didn't even notice you. Come work for the dregs. We'll buy your contract, and you shall work for us, and I shall train you how to kill people. And she's like, no, I don't want to kill people. And he was like, you say that now, but wait till they're trying to kill you, and then it'll happen. And those two like each other from the beginning. There's no mystery. Immediately, they're like, okay. For those that
very adept.
For those that aren't watching and are listening, I pantomimed looking at someone like shyly from the back of my hand. Anyway, and then we have Jesper. Jesper is a gunslinger, pew pew pew, and he has a gambling problem. He does not have a tragic backstory. He just struggled focusing and doing stuff, and he always had a lot of energy, so his father sent him to university in Kenderdam, and he decided, you know what, fuck university, gambling is my calling, and thus ended up working for the dregs as a gunman, and he is sassy. And he's not sassy, he's not sassy in a bad way. I find Jesper kind of charming. Again, the guy who acted him in the show, he brought life
fantastic
to this character. He was absolutely great, and it's who I thought and pictured the whole time. Jesper is just like a fun character. Again, he's not tragic backstory. And then we have
he also pretends to have like lived a really rough life when he's talking to Wyland, and it's like, no, you lived on a farm and then went to university, like, and were well enough to go to university, and then you just kind of started killing people for money. Like, that's not, you're not like a really rough and tough curmudgeon. Like,
and I would have liked it if, from his point of view, there was a moment where he was like, I say this because I am self-conscious of the fact that I didn't live a rough life, so I'm going to take it out on the only person I can. Because there's a way to get that across out of the character, and the character doesn't have to explicitly say that to the reader, but there are ways to get that across, and unfortunately, Bardugo doesn't take that route. Anyway, next we have Nina. Nina is a Grisha from Rovka, but she was captured. She ended up working for this place called, like, the White Roses. She works for Kaz Brecker as well. She is a heart render, which means she can close your windpipe, make your heart speed up or slow down. She can make you pass out. She can close your nasal cavities. All that kind of fucky stuff. And Kaz uses her for information and to, like, help heal guys, even though she's not actually a healer person.
She's very sassy, quirky, femme fatale.
Nina is big boobied anime girl. The blonde, big boobied anime girl.
Guess who my second favorite character in this book is?
So that's Nina. But her tragic backstory, which was a year ago, was she was captured by Fjerdan Druskella, who are witch hunters. Fjerdan's basically like the Norse.
No. They're witch hunter Nazis. Let's be very clear. It's not like just like they hunt witches. No, they're straight up Nazis from Sweden.
They hate the Grisha. They think they're unnatural, and they have this whole brotherhood, like warrior monks. Basically, like racist Jedi, but without magic.
Nina, she got captured by these, but guess what? One of them was like a really hunky Nazi witch hunter.
Who was also around her age and isn't 40.
Yeah, and he's like only slightly less bad because he's the only decent one that doesn't want to rape them.
And his name is Matthias, not Matthias, though that's how it's spelled.
Why is it Matthias? I don't like the word Matthias. That's not what I would expect.
I don't know.
Funny.
That's a very, like, and it's a very
European thing.
But she's captured by the Fjerdans. They're going to take her and put her on trial, and then a storm comes and smashes the boat to bits, and then she's floating in the ocean with Matthias. But she saves Matthias, and then Matthias and her, like, harass each other to shore, and then they bond, and they have to learn. They have to learn how to see past how they are, like, because in her mind, he is an evil Druskella who hunts her people and has killed people, and for him, her people killed his family, and so they're each other's greatest monster, but they have to work together to survive.
Sleep naked with each other, and they get turned on, and then they want to, you know, like...
This would have worked as an anime. Let me tell you, that is a trope in manga and anime that comes up, like, it is a shoujo trope. Like, it's the cold.
Big boobied anime girl. That's what I'm saying. That's Nina.
They begin to, like, become friendly and like, stuff. And everything is kind of going well. And he, like, they finally make it to civilization. And he's like, I won't turn you in. I'll get you on a ship back to Ravka. And then... we don't know why, but then she goes up to some Kirch people and is like, he's a slaver, you need to take him. And then he's put into prison, and then she spends the next year trying to get him out of prison. But now Matthias, who's our fifth main character, hates her. And is like, you betrayed me. I knew you were terrible, you Grisha witch.
But also, you're so hot. I keep, like, thinking about it.
I still have wet dreams about you regularly. Those are the worst ones. The ones where I kill you are better.
Yes, and he's very betrayed by his own body for her. He is my... Here's the thing. In the TV show, I didn't really like him, but, like, he is my favorite character in the book. Part of it is his voice actor is the guy from Hyperion, and so it has a slightly, like, I think I'm cool, but I'm not feeling to him. And, like, he also has one of the tropes I like, which is dumb character doesn't really realize how dumb he is. Though I think more should have been done with that. But yes, he is, I will argue... This should have been the sole POV and main character of this entire book.
Oh, I like that idea.
It's so much better. I will return to it after Maria has her rant.
No. There's still another character. There's 6 crows.
Okay,
there's 6.
Ahead.
I only did 5.
Wylan isn't a character.
But he's one of the crows. There are 6 crows. Here's the 6th crow. Why is he the only motherfucker without a POV? Because then you'd find out he couldn't read, and she'd have to give up the ghost about the plot twist at the end. That's the only reason. That is the only reason Wylan is not a POV character. Because at some point, that motherfucker would have mentioned he couldn't read.
Yes, because it would have been a huge concern of his, considering how embarrassed he is of it.
So when they're hired to do this heist, they're hired by this merchant named Van Eck. And Van Eck is like, heck, you're a rich guy who works on the council for the city merchants. And he's like, you need to go do this for me. Wylan is Van Eck's estranged son. And Kaz is like, this is my insurance. Because I found letters that Van Eck wrote to his son begging him to come home. So he obviously, like, wants his son. So this is how I make sure I get my payday. And so Wylan comes on the journey and is one of the main 6 characters, doesn't have a POV. Wylan is very good at math. He can make stuff. He's basically, like, if you were playing D&D, he's an artificer. Like, he's an artificer as a class. And him and Jesper have where they start off kind of like butting heads. Jesper keeps giving him shit, and is just annoyed by Wylan's presence. And eventually, by the end, they get to know each other, and they're fond of each other. And to the beginning inklings of being like, damn, is he kind of cute? And it's the only true burn about this book. Anybody who tells you that Inej and Kaz are a slow burn are fucking lying to you. Don't do it. And Wylan makes things go boom. And that's the cast.
Okay.
Can you see how all 6 are coupled?
I hated that.
Very obviously. So I'm gonna go a little bit. I'm just gonna talk through some stuff. This book suffers because it breaks its own tension a lot. This book has multiple POV main characters, and luckily, for the most part, they are all together with each other, or the plots are going forward. Sometimes with POV characters, their stories are so disparate that when they switch to a new point of view, you're literally like, I don't care about what's happening over here. Yeah. I wanted to know what was happening. This book doesn't do that. What it does do is that in the middle of almost every chapter from every POV, we get a detailed flashback of their past. I will say, their pasts are more interesting than the current fucking story.
I would argue that.
No! Kaz's history? Way more interesting than what Kaz is doing right now.
Yeah. You're right. You're right.
Matthias and Nina's story? Like, oh, There's so much more depth. The only people who don't have in-depth flashbacks is Jesper, who has 0 flashbacks. His chapters, do we even have a Wylan chapter?
No.
No, there's no Wylan chapter.
Oh, so yeah, never mind.
Nothing.
Yeah. And then Inej has some, but hers, I would say, are integrated the best with what is happening
100%.
with
100%.
around her. Like, one of the best flashbacks she has is directly tied into what is happening in a scene. I will argue that as a character, Inej, amongst the crew, feels the most emotionally, like, void. Like, she's the flattest of the characters. And by what flat, I don't mean that she's a flat character. I mean, she's the least developed as far as personality, vibe, like,
I think that, but you could also argue that that reflects her literally not knowing herself and finally becoming the person.
But if that's the case, then we should have had a book just from her point of view where she finds out who the fuck she is. Like, as a point of view character, she's not adding a ton.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
You have this main plot that's happening, okay? And it's a heisty heist, you know, and everybody's got their role. But then in the middle of it, we gotta go back 4 or 5 years to talk about Kaz's tragic backstory, go back a year ago to talk about Matthias and Nina's backstory, who are giving you, because it's the same backstory. The two of them have the same backstory, but you're getting it from both of their perspectives in different chapters. And then you're also getting Inej's tragic backstory, where she was put into child prostitution, which the book never says is child prostitution, but she was at the menagerie how long before Kaz got to her? Which was like a year ago, so she was like 16?
No, it was young. I feel like it was younger than that, too. It's because if she's like 14, I don't know. Regardless, when she is kidnapped by slavers, she's like, 5 more minutes, Papa. So I'm like, Jesus!
Yeah, she was 14. So child prostitution, you know, we're doing great. The book never looks at you. Like, the book never looks at you and goes, this is child prostitution. All of a sudden you're like, oh my god, this is child prostitution. Like, this is rough.
For a while, I couldn't figure out if she'd actually had sex with people there or not, because I felt like the book was saying she hadn't. Also, Ben in the Discord called it the furry brothel, which I think is a very funny name.
Yes, I also agree. For those who don't understand that, because I feel like we'll never get back to that detail, all the exotic girls dress up as different animals.
And so we're dealing with all of these different things, and unfortunately, at a certain point, it is breaking its own tension. When the plot is kind of excelling and getting somewhere, and you're like, oh, a thing is happening.
Dragged back down.
We're dragged back down. And then you get into that story, like I said a couple times with Kaz or with Nina and Matthias. You're into that story, but now we have to go back to this. And so this is like a constant thing of like rising, falling tensions, like the whole way fucking through. And I'm just like, yo, can we calm down? And then you switch to different character point of views, and despite the fact that they're all in the same way, because each character is having really specific internal crises, you're also dragged back by that. The fact that this book is as fine as it is a testament to the fact that she is a talented writer, because this should not work. This many POVs, this many flashbacks should not work.
Very talented, but incompetent writer. It's a very odd combination.
I don't like the word incompetent. I think there's a different word that would match specifically the specific thing that she's missing in this. But you know what's funny is that I think in a few instances, I feel like I see her vision. And it's very like media heavy, like visual media heavy in the way she presents it in some ways, which it works in some ways and it doesn't in others. But I think she works in the flashbacks very well in several instances. So, for example, I feel like when we got Kaz's flashback to his brother, if it was just staged off a little longer, it would be the perfect moment for us to learn more about him. I liked Inej's, and we'll talk about it later, some flashbacks about her parents while she's climbing something later on in the story, which is what Maria was probably talking about earlier. So there are several examples where she did do a good job, but I think honestly, the more we're talking about it, the more I think I agree with you, Maria. I think she would have benefited from the lack of page space that would have come from cutting perspectives.
Another problem with the perspective thing, very quickly before Maria continues her tirade. This is a heist. It cuts all tension about whether the people are going to backstab each other or not, or if it's going to work or not, if we keep switching back and forth between people and their motivation. So, like, at one point, Matthias seems like he's betrayed Nina, and you're like, no, we were with him a chapter ago. We know he isn't. We know Kaz isn't going to do this. It's like there's no tension involved at all in the characters.
I disagree. There was a point in the book where I was like, oh my God, is she gonna write a horrible ending to this? And is this like, but it didn't make sense for the character. This is, okay, so this is my number one gripe. There's a point in the book where I stopped believing in the characters as being real characters, and they become more puppets. And that's specifically a point when they're in this prison that comes later in the book. And I was like, oh, this is not going the way I was hoping it would go and thought it would go. This is becoming very depressing and dumb and like a waste of my time. And then it bipolar like switches, goes back up in tone. And I don't believe that like between those two moments of emotional, like what's happening between the characters, I don't believe that it's not the character's fault. It's literally, I don't think it's written well.
So that's what he's saying, though, because actually you guys are arguing the same point. I'm going to translate for you. Yes. So what he's saying is because you are in all the characters' head, at that moment where suddenly you're like, why are they doing this? Why is this working this way? That doesn't make sense given what I've known before. If it had only been from two of the characters' perspective, you could have had that tension. You could have had that tension because you would have actually...
I think we're all agreeing with each other.
Yes, that's my point. We're speaking the same language. The problem you have in that moment is that you have been in all of their heads. You know what they were thinking. You know what they were doing. So suddenly when everybody starts doing weird shit, you're like, ¿por qué? Why?
Yeah.
For why, my dude?
And the worst one of all of these is, despite how much I like him, Kaz is one of the worst ones. And then Matthias thinks he's going to drill my eyeballs out of my head. I don't understand what Leigh Bardugo is doing with his character throughout the entire book.
This is the problem, is she needed to flesh out some of these things more that she didn't have time to do. And again, at a certain point, the plot took over the characters, and also it saps the tension because we're like, that's not actually what's going to happen. So then when there's that moment where it goes back up in tone, you're like, okay, I guess this is what was going to happen. Like, that's one of just the problems this has.
I'm going to be leaving a lot of my criticisms and stuff till as we go through the plot, because otherwise it's just going to front load a lot. But did you have more rage you wanted to go on, Maria?
A couple of people in our Discord noted that the heist works a little too cleanly at a couple points, where you think that they're not working, but then it was part of the plan the whole time.
It removed my belief in it. Like, I could tell, I could see the author's hand in those moments. Like, that is my biggest gripe, is from them getting them going into the prison, from them then on.
And the thing is, it's true. There are times where, and what it does is it saps the tension. There's this moment where you are legitimately kind of scared for Inej.
Yes!
And like this whole thing. And you're like, oh, what's happening? And then it was like, gee, this was the plan the whole time. Like, that doesn't work. It's one of the complaints I have with Ocean's 11, where there's that point where you think the plan went awry and they had to like think on their feet and deal with it. And no, he planned it that way the whole time, and he knew it was gonna happen. And like, I'm sorry, I just don't believe people are that fucking smart. Like, and it saps away the moments where you think, okay, how is this character going to deal with this new situation and handle it in a creative way? But it saps that if it was all just planned. By plan you make plans, sir.
You know what would have sold me more on the overall black code or black flag or whatever black situation, their final plan? So I think she does a 92% well job, except if she had just put in water like illusions and like a few other water things, like not onomatopoeia, but like used the sound thing earlier on, weaved into two places in the book for Kaz, I would have believed what happened.
But also, it's just rough.
There's other things too.
Yeah, but it's just rough that Kaz would not, we're in his point of view. How is he hiding information from the reader? That's why not having... I think Kaz would have worked, and also Kaz worked the best from other people's points of view. Yeah. I liked his backstory, but I thought he was much more impressive in other people's point of view. I think having the first book where you're not in Kaz's head, and then have the second book, so the first book about Matthias and Nina, and like, their part, like, because Nina's connected to the story from the beginning. You get Mateus.
That makes sense.
It's about the two of them. And then book 2, we get into Kaz's head after we've gotten to know him as this other thing, and then we realize the stuff between. Because then it makes the whole water river thing make sense, because we weren't in Kaz's fucking head the whole time. And why didn't he once think, I hope we have more of that stuff that'll blow up the tree.
Yeah, I told my husband when I was listening to that moment where he's like the sound thing about the tree in the water. If you've read it, then you understand. I said it was like kind of like her playing the like Wizard of Oz thing of like, oh, but look, the reveal is this. But the problem is that since we are in their heads, I don't like, it's movie. That's what I'm saying about the visual media thing.
It works better if it's an anime. This whole thing
Yes.
feels a lot more, the flashbacks make more sense if this is an anime.
That's what I'm saying. When I said that she relies on visual media inspiration, at least it feels like it. What I mean is that would make sense for us not to know what was going on in their heads visually.
Or in an anime or in a TV show. All of this stuff that is a problem because we're in the characters' heads would be completely eliminated. You would have the tension of, is this character going to betray this other character? Is this thing going to work out? Like, you would have all of that in, like, all of that would just be wiped away. And so I do think that, like, she had, like, it's almost like she's a very talented, like, storyboarder. And she's talented in specific scenes. Like, the scene of Kaz on the dead people barge was, like,
great.
a well-written scene. You know? It was I was like, yeah, maybe I wouldn't want to touch people after that either. The problem is, I think she's not as good as the introspective thought stuff. I think that's where she fails a little bit. It fails partially because it doesn't connect to the things that, like, happen as well as it should. So I think anyone else have any other points? Because I think we've gone on, we front loaded up quite a bit of this.
The first scene of the book proper is like this shadowy deal in a dockyard where Inej is the Wraith, right? So she has ninja skills, and she like is watching from afar as Kaz and his crew are meeting like another crew, and they have very like Dickensian British Peaky Blinders dialogue that feels a little broad. And in this scene, I realized that Kaz, I was going to hate almost more than any other character.
Oh my god.
Because this is the scene where we find out he is always in control, and everyone always knows that he's in control, and he can read anyone perfectly, and he's always 5 steps ahead, and he's a badass.
What, you don't like men that are just dicks? Like, that's all it is. He's a secretive dick.
This is what would have made Kaz work better, is if Kaz had no fighting skill and physically had fuck all.
Oh my god, yeah, that would make it a million times.
Purely the brain.
The very first thing that came to mind when Kaz later on is able to, like, handle himself, and he's like Peaky Blinder style.
Or climbing up 4, like,
yes,
5 flights of stairs.
He literally has a bad leg. Like, I like, it does encumber him, so I'm not going to say it doesn't, but it does the line of being, like, just there for the sake of being there.
Yes. He does too much.
Yes, and I would have 100%, the very first thing I thought when he fought was, why is he fighting? Why is this happening? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's like, if this were a story just of Kaz, and, like, I wanted to go on, like, you know, where I eat all the yummy stuff and none of the good stuff for me, then yeah, that would be very wish fulfillment. That would be very fun. But that's not...
Why do you think girls love him? I mean, in fandom.
Well, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you?
God, I fucking hated him.
But as a true, like, analysis of a character, it doesn't really make a ton of sense for him to be able to carry himself. Or if he does, it's always through heavy, hardcore cheating, like throwing sand in someone's eyes, or like always having something on that other person that will stop them from physically encountering him.
I also think it would have worked better given that if we were going to play in the fact that it does have a bad enough leg that he has to walk with a cane regularly, and if he doesn't, his leg gets really sore. I think it would have worked really cool if people actually couldn't recognize him, and he was just the guy in the shadows, and he had to, like, select group of people that he worked with, but that he was like he let
Pascal, something like that.
Yeah, Air Pascal.
Oh yeah, it is like Air Pascal. Or
yeah,
something.
Because I just remember thinking
Pierre Haskell. It's Pierre Haskell.
Pierre Haskell.
Got it.
Pierre Haskell.
If he let Pierre Haskell, like everybody just thought it was him, and people heard of Kaz Brecker, but nobody was really sure who he was. Like, I think that would have worked. Like, because I like the idea of the genius in the background. Just he knows what he's good at. He stays in that. He also knows that physically, if he's captured in a fight, he's not going to do well. And he poses as just a normal, like, run-of-the-mill, low-level thug. Or not even thug, but just, like, runner.
Inherently, he seemed like what you just depict, like, not the what we actually got. But the man behind everything, and they know him maybe as Dirty Hands, but they don't know who he is. They just know he wears black gloves. Or something like that. And because that's all you can see are his black gloves. Like, I felt like that was all inherently built into the character. And then for some reason, like, we had to OP him a little bit.
So, Science Fantastic makes the point, Kaz is just the greatest at everything, plus he's an asshole. I guess that's a wish fulfillment, but it's irritating to me. Yes. So, there's a couple of problems. The first is that I don't like how women write male wish fulfillment love interests, but that's a longer point. Kaz should be the character he is in the show, because in the show, I didn't get the sense he was very good at fighting until halfway through, like, season 2. Like, he knows how to smack someone with his cane unexpectedly, but, like, he's not a fighter, and that's not the impression I got from the show early on. He's also much more of a small-time criminal, I felt like, in the show. I didn't feel like he was this world-spanning. He's also not Sandy with his banter. That is a big thing that I fucking hated about Kaz in this book, is he has that kind of like, I'm a superior asshole and I make jokes and banter.
Greed will bow to me.
Yeah, just dumb shit like that. And in the show, the actor says everything with this, like, kind of like, he's sullen. He's very sullen in the show, and that felt a little bit younger, and also a lot more realistic. Like, yeah, he's on the outs. The book also, the show also helps in that he's an underdog when the show starts, whereas here he starts as, I'm perfect and awesome, and everyone knows I'm perfect and awesome, and I can just, like, unman people, like, yeah, shoot me, quip, quip, quip. And even the same dialogue in the show will come off very differently. Like, there's a scene in season 2. Well, okay, so not talking about the same dialogue, but in terms of his character, there's a scene in season 2 where him and Nina are, like, trying to catch some Chinese lady, and, like, Nina is like constantly needling him and you can get the sense that he doesn't really know how to banter, and he doesn't like to, and he's just kind of annoyed at this whole interaction. Whereas Book him would be like bantering back, and
and quippy. He's very quippy.
I love the show version then so much, because the thing is I think I saw the show version in what I wanted of this character. And I think, like, that's why I can acknowledge it's not, like, as good as it could have been. But simultaneously, I really like that character archetype. And I'm literally picturing, I think, the show thing. And I think I'm just forgiving the other things because I didn't see the show as a comparison.
I think that's honestly what is happening. Because as someone who has seen both, when I started the book, I really didn't like Kaz because of how, like, he was just like, quip.
I didn't feel one way or the other. I just was like, okay, I'm getting introduced, I guess.
And part of it is because I liked show Kaz, and so I'm going to highlight a comment. Lindbergh says, show Kaz comes off as realistically neurotic and paranoid, which makes sense for a rigid planner. And that's what I wanted. Do you know how cool it is to have a planner slash like the strategist, like the type A strategist in the background? Because, like, in every friend group there's the friend who plans everything. Like, if you're going on a girls trip, there's the one who books everything, does everything. In couples, there's always the one that has to plan everything, and I am very much that person. In almost everything. I go on vacation with my moms.
Guys, she and her boyfriend were going on a 3-day little trip away, and she literally made an itinerary planner that she wrote in, like, third person and, like, sent to her boyfriend with, like, pretend everything as if it were, like, a real package deal she had just purchased. And she did that for me when I came down to see her when we were younger, and I was just coming to sleep over at her house. She made an itinerary of all the activities we were going to do, the times and the days with little pictures and icons. So yes, she is a planner.
I also plan for like there are 6 things we could potentially do, but realistically, we'll only get to 2, maybe 3. You know, like I'm very aware of like human limitations. But anyway, so like I liked in the show that like that guy with that level of like worry and planning and like forethought into what is happening wasn't a badass like fighter person. He was just the neurotic planner. Like I really enjoyed that. And also, again, you can't be great at everything. And unfortunately, no. Kaz just is.
Yeah, and he's pitted against a lot of characters who make dumb mistakes against him, and it's very, very annoying. Again, Show Kaz is that rigid planner. He's down on his luck, and like and again, the actor brings a lot to it. I didn't feel like he was a big fighter either. And again, so like Show Kaz has weaknesses, whereas Book Kaz is just a wish fulfillment love interest, and I hate it. He's not in the top pantheon of characters I hate. He's not Patroclus. He's not Achilles. But I would put him only slightly above like a Rhysand.
I wouldn't go that hard, I think.
You liked Rhysand though, so.
No, I don't feel one way or the other. I feel, actually, now that you've literally said that, I guess so, maybe. I don't know. I really like the image of what I have of my version of Kaz. I guess.
That's fair. That's fair. And so this whole thing happens, and then after this whole, like, in media res thing is when Kaz gets kidnapped, of which he immediately turns it on his captors because whatever.
I didn't like that at all. Oh my god. That's when I was
also,
like...
why does he ever travel alone?
Yes! Dude, why did Inej... Wait. We need to stop real quick. Inej is literally his... I thought she was his bodyguard. Why did she leave him in a dark alleyway?
Why isn't he always just surrounded? Like, he should have 2 goons behind him at all times.
He's a big guy. He has a lot of information.
Yes. His room at the little house where they live in should be the only place where he gets any real rest, because that's the place where he's alone. Like, that guy should always be packing some people.
Doesn't make any sense. Like, literally, when she walked away, I was like, wait.
It's just the dumbest, like, thing. Like, again, because, like, you can't have all... Anyway, so he gets taken up. he's taken by these guards. Also, we have to explain the prologue. The prologue is from a random guard's point of view, who's like... I have a crush on this girl, and then the girl is Grisha, and then she's fed a drug, and it makes her go kind of crazy, and she like uses like her powers in a way that no Grisha's able to use her powers, and you're like, oh shit, there's a drug that's making Grisha extra powerful, but also making them sick and addicted to it. So, and then back to the point we're at. So Kaz gets kidnapped by that guy I mentioned, who is like the rich merchant who's like, the guy who invented this drug that's terrible is being held by the Fjerdans, and you need to go capture him so we can make him safe and protect him, but also make sure nobody gets access to this drug, because it will crash the economy and ruin trade lines, and it shall be a pox upon all houses. And he's like, I will pay you 10 million Kruger, and Kaz is like, no, and then he's like, 20 million Kruger, and Kaz is like, maybe, and he basically, like, it's held in this place called the Ice Palace, or Castle, I don't know. It's in the Fjerdan, like, most secure place that very few people have been in.
It's the Pentagon, basically, except for more intense, apparently. Like,
it's the Nazi bunker.
So that's the vibe we're getting here, is that it's literally impenetrable, and there is no information from which he could possibly garner a plan into the inside.
Yeah, it's like, oh god, you can never make it. This is another example of what we were just talking about Kaz being invulnerable. It's not like he is blackmailed into doing this job. He literally is just like, no, give me more money and more money. Like, if he had been blackmailed into it, or if the guy had leverage over to him, it would have been a weakness, and that's not there. It's one of the ways he is just the super best.
And it's also a way to get him like an emotional stake into the, because at a later point he discovers that the guy that he hates is also doing this, and then that gives him like, he's like, oh, I need to beat that guy. But like, you need that emotional stake earlier, and you're right, Will. I think having like an actual reason why he has to do this thing, and like the only people who have that, like, it's Matthias. Like, he needs his freedom. Everybody else is just like, yeah, money.
Okay, so that's another thing we need to talk about, is that, no, actually, let's introduce Matthias first. Kaz goes to Nina. We described who Nina was before. She's like on her, and she's been trying to get into Hellgate to get Matthias out, and Kaz is like, okay, we need somebody who knows the Ice Court, so Matthias will get him out finally. And they go to Hellgate, which is a super awful prison, and he's like in a fighting pit, because of course he's in a fighting pit.
There's always a fighting pit.
And
there's always a fighting pit.
Always rich people trying to make money on it. Anyway, they break him out of prison.
Wait, you forgot there's also one other thing. There's also always exotic animals being pitted against.
In the fighting pit. And he has to kill some wolves, which is sad because wolves are like his spirit animal. Anyway, they get Matthias out. Matthias is like, I'm not doing this. And then they're like, we'll give you your freedom. And he's like, you're asking me to betray my country. And he also like wants to kill Nina because Nina did this to him.
Him getting broken out of prison was the only part of this book that I felt like I kept wanting to read it, because I wanted to see what had happened with him and Nina. Him and Nina occupy archetypes that I'm fond of, and their relationship type is a type I'm fond of. But I don't think it's done great throughout the series. Throughout the book.
It's awful.
I thought at first it was a little bit better because we didn't know about their backstory, so you can just mentally fill it in as having made sense.
Yeah.
But later we get flashbacks and you're like, oh no, this is at her normal writing quality. And so Matthias, again, this is where I'm going to make my argument that Matthias should be the only main character in this book. So, a couple of reasons. First off, he starts out as an underdog. Already, we're kind of on his side. B, he is the new person coming into the group. Like in a heist or like in a war story, you have the new person who joins the existing squad. Okay, cool. The thing that they're trying to do, fascinating in terms of it really ties into his ideas of honor and its immediate moral quandary, the heart at war with itself, as Martin would say. And like, there are real stakes involved. They're going to be going back to his homeland. And then there's the whole emotional thing of Nina. And like, okay, him and Nina's relationship will be complicated by this, this mission. That is not what happens. He almost immediately gets slapped down by Kaz. Like, he tries to brush Kaz, and Kaz wins because he's super perfect. And that was the moment where I fucking hated Kaz more than anything. And, like, the other thing is that I would have really liked Matthias's viewpoint, because there's a part where when the crows are, like, talking to him or whatever, he's like, yeah, I know they think I'm dumb, but I'm not as dumb as they think. And I really liked that. And there could have been so much done with the Druskeli idea, the witch hunters, of the Grisha as like aberrations of nature, like a walking singularity that kind of changes everything around it. And like, that would have been such a, and especially like the idea maybe of a little bit more like of a kami spirit type thing, where they're like enslaving the world a little bit. Or maybe you could have also had some explanation of like, okay, maybe they are escaped servants from some kind of a Grisha realm, or maybe they had to keep finding an army with Grisha, and so they had like these more specialized squads, and now it's becoming more of a toxic thing. But they're like, there could be so much more done with that idea, especially because at the end of the book, Nina will get like on that super powerful drug or whatever, and like that is a thing that makes you go crazy and super powerful. And so even if he's learned to accept her as she is now, that would put even more strain on it, that she actually is now uncontrolled and kind of crazy. And also it cuts down on the viewpoint problem. We don't have 6 other viewpoints, and the other thing is that all of a sudden there's so much more tension, because going into this heist, we should have Kaz has a goal, which is to free this Chinese guy and get the money. Nina has a goal in that she wants to kill this Chinese guy so he doesn't become bad for Grisha. And Matthias has a goal in that he, like, maybe he's going to betray them, maybe he's not. And so, like, that's 3 conflicting goals. And the thing about a heist is you want everything to go to shit at the same moment. You want players who are kind of out-thinking each other. And so that would have been really interesting. And that is not the book we got.
Along with making Matthias the sole perspective, I would have also tampered down on some like dumb features of the I keep forgetting the Fjordans.
The
Fjordans.
Such as that they believe women should stay in the home and hurt. Like, I just feel like that's like kind of like doing it on purpose to make them seem just like kind of big dumb animals. And I don't like that that's like, it didn't have to be in there for any reason whatsoever. And it doesn't really necessarily make sense per se. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it fits. And so I like your idea, Will, about making it, because all of those plot points that he mentioned, literally, it's almost like it's pre-made to have him. Like the way she has everything structured.
As the main character.
And then you could expand beyond that from each other character's perspective, and like if you wanted to expand it into a series and everything.
Well, I think Maria's idea is brilliant. This book is Matthias's book. The next book is Kaz's book, because he's been introduced in third person, and then
the last book is Jesper's. And you can build it. Okay, that's fair.
Jesper's a stupid character, yeah.
But I think that's a much better way to do a duology, and also have these two men who have conflicting things and ways that they have to, like, overcome this thing. And Kaz's story being set in Ketterdam makes sense. That's his world. This book is Matthias's world. And so I think...
even more so.
I think that's the way to do it. I think the problem is Bardugo made 6 characters that she really liked, and she
Ben mentioned this in the Discord, so you're quoting him. Nice job. H-Bomber guy's going to come after you.
Oh no, sorry, I hadn't read that one.
I'm just kidding. No,
well, I will say Ben also made this point. And it's like she created this cast of characters, and she went, I want all of them, and I want all of their backstories. I love it so much, because one thing I will say is that this book is written with love. You can tell Bardugo likes these characters, that she enjoys them, that there is a heartfeltness to the narration in a way that, like, you can tell that this was a labor of love for her. But unfortunately, she could not do the necessary cutting and slashing that would have really tightened this up as a narrative. You can tell this exact same story from Matthias's point of view. You can fall in love with Kaz. And imagine how much better the slow burn idea of Kaz and Inej would be if it was just Matthias noticing shit and those moments. Some of my best ships have been characters who weren't the POV character, but the POV character just, like, saw stuff and you were able to, like, put it together, because you get to put in all the tension and add it all in, and it's just, it's so good.
Authors don't understand that the reader should always want a little bit more than you are giving them. And the thing is, I actually don't think I would have disliked Kaz as much of a character from a third-person point of view.
You absolutely wouldn't have.
Especially if he matches wits with Matthias and actually kind of, like, gets deflated a little bit in the end in certain ways. Like that, he's a much better character. He's like the lone badass, and, like, that character is much better introduced from another character's point of view than from their own, because they just sound pretentious in their own.
You could also work in a lot of themes a lot better, like, over a long period of time. Like, so for example, the how Kaz doesn't want to touch people. Matthias wouldn't necessarily, like, look into that too much, but he would note, oh, he's wearing gloves, okay, but then later when he has them off, or like him recognizing the panic attack, or anything like that later on, where just those little things, you would be hooked as a reader to know, oh, what happened? Why is he like this? This is interesting. He's a pretty badass character, or seems competent everywhere else, but all of a sudden he's very incompetent.
And that would make the reveal of his backstory in the second book so much more impactful. And just and it would put Kaz at an underdog position at the start of the second book.
Yes, it would.
He's been fucked. Inej has been captured.
None of his power, no money.
And he has to make a deal with Pekka Rollins. Like, oh, that is such a good starting point for a character.
This is such lost opportunity.
Yes. And that's what I mean by when I say that this book is fine. I'm saying that in the sense that this has a lot of missed opportunity and ways that you could have really, like, hit it, you know, like, real good.
I don't understand. Why don't mainstream publishers just give us millions of dollars to fix all their books? It's not fair.
Wait, somebody had a question for us. By the way, my question was for the crew.
Do you think there would be a way to be able to pull off the POV. I'm gonna be honest, I don't like multi-POVs. I never have. I very much subscribe to the George R. R. Martin, we are alone in the world, and so you lose something of the subjectivity of the world when you get to see other people's point of views. I've seen this a lot in romance novels.
But isn't his books multiple POVs?
Yes, but they're on different continents usually.
But that still runs into the point I have where, like, I hate when I hate that more when people are just in completely different spaces. Like, at that point, just make it 2 books. Don't put it in one. If they're disconnected stories.
I don't disagree. That his biggest problem is that in the later books, they aren't even slightly interwoven. So, like, in earlier books, there would be like, oh, they heard about the character from over there or over there. But generally, each character is off of their own little cast. Martin also does a lot of really smart things to not have like, each of his chapters... I could go into this. But anyway, no, I generally don't like multiple POVs. I always like one.
I do like multiple points of views when the points of views are adding something that, like, the another character isn't, because you're each character is biased. We are learning more about the biases.
Have I ever said how much I hate multiple points of view?
Yes, you have. I think I'm the only one that is okay with it, but I like it. I like it a little bit tighter. And so for me, a good version of a multiple POV, if we exclude some of them, is in Spinning Silver. I like what the 3 main female characters bring to your understanding of the world. They are in some ways dealing with separate plots and different things, like, especially if you use Miriam and
That's a very good point. That's a very, very good point, is that book is made stronger by the 3 of them interweaving, and they are kind of connected enough without actually being on separate continents. Not to interrupt, but another book that actually I think the multiple POV helps a lot is Dune. Dune is a book where it's really actually cool to be able to jump from one person's head to another, because it's written in omniscient third person more, so you will jump in a scene from one person to the other without, like, a chapter break, and you get to see the characters trying to outmatch each other. Like, do they know the thing that I know? So I'm going to say the thing, and that really helped. One of the problems with the sequel is that the camera didn't have, like, a reason from going from person to person's head. It just kind of, like, wandered. So the thing about POV is you just have to use it to, like, you have to pick a reason you're doing the thing you're doing.
Unfortunately, I think this book fell prey to, she liked all of the characters, so she wanted all of their voices and all of their backstories. Because while we don't have flashbacks for Jesper's past, we still have multiple, like, we still have like, he thinks about his past, so we still learn about it.
This is kind of like the too much of a good thing type of thing, where, like, there's a lot of really nice little things, like, sprinkled in, but it's also the same thing as, like, each time I say this, I want to describe it a specific way. How would you describe Dat's food, the food at Dat's?
Yes.
That's what I mean.
It's where it is...
You sons of bitches.
A little bit overindulgent. I knew she was going with the food but also food metaphors are great, because the taste of too much is very specific.
Literally, the one location went under. Now they only have one other location. But anyway, no, there's this restaurant called Dad's, and they just did, like, fried food on fried food on fried food on top of waffles and ice cream.
Fried food. It was like 3 burgers with donuts, or pucks of mac and cheese that were the buns for a burger. And, like, everything on the menu was up to that. And, like, some of the stuff was, like, they had this one steak and blue cheese salad that was actually delicious, but even that had, like, so much stuff. And reading the menu, you're like, oh my God.
This is too much. Like, it's the same thing where it's like, it's not even good at that point.
They won't pick the thing. Like, there's too much, and it's too overindulgent. And that is what this book is. She loved all of these things, so she put them all together. She just, and it would have worked better if she just let the steak be the steak, you know, instead of, like, having all the stuff.
I actually am pretty, like, fussed about the fact that it's not from Matthias's perspective now, because his stern approach to life would have suited this book and the perspective of these other characters so well, and it would have been so comedic too in a lot of instances.
Yeah.
Well, and he would have had to grow by being around these non-honorable characters, and he would have had to think differently, and instead of using his muscle, he would have had to learn how to outsmart Kaz a little bit and take on some of that roguishness. And the other thing is, this is just his should be, it isn't in the book, his should be the least non-modern point of view. He should think like a Fjord and not not like a person of nowadays with some very mild, distant racism.
So this will be my last food metaphor, but you know on Thanksgiving when there's so much food and you like all of it, and so you put too much of it on the plate, and so you don't enjoy anything particularly well. It's just too much, and at the end of it, you feel kind of over full and unsatisfied. But if you had just 3 of those things on the plate at the same time, you would have been able to enjoy it much better. That's what this book is. I'm not saying any of the individual components are bad. Some of the side dishes you might not like as much as the others, but if it was just like 3 components, it would work better. And in this case, a story that focused, like from Matthias's point of view, more focused on his relationship with Nina and then the overall story, I think that would be much better. Anyway, plot. Jesus. So they get Wylan to go on this adventure with them, and they're gonna go by boat, and it's the 6 of them, and they've got some people on the boat, and they go, like, all you need to know about the boat journey is Nina and Matthias are like, we argue. They go on this journey, they get to Fjerda, and once they get there, they have to, like, leave a lot of their stuff. And basically their plan is to break in through the prison, because there's going to be this big old festival happening that's really big in Fjerda, and it's a really big party, and they invite a lot of people in, and their plan is to get arrested, get into the prison, break out of prison by scaling a 6-floor chimney, having incinerator chimney, and then going across the roof, because the only way to access the roof is through this fucking incinerator chimney. Go across, go to the place, break out the guy who made the terrible drug, and then escape with him. But of course, stuff doesn't go well. Number 1, Inej is hurt. On the day that they leave the boat, they're attacked. The day that they leave to go on the boat, they're attacked by some opposing gangs.
Through my favorite trope. Torture actually works. Yay.
He tortures what's-his-face to Uman to find out that it was Pekka Rollins.
And it works like torture always does in books. Go ahead.
Pekka Rollins is Kaz's, like, mortal enemy. He basically robbed and conned Kaz and his brother for all of their money and sent them onto the street, and that's how his brother caught firepox and how Kaz caught firepox and nearly died and ended up in a barge of corpses. So he doesn't like Pekka. And Pekka Rollins is also going to attempt this heist, and at this point, this is the point where Kaz is like, now I got skin in the game. I need to take this from Pekka. But anyway, so they get to Fjerda, they get into the prison. While they're there, they see Pekka's crew on spikes, so they're like, wow, they must have failed. And Kaz is like, is Pekka here? Is this thing? At this point, everyone's bantering. Wylan and Jesper are bantering, and like, giving each other a hard time. Matthias and Nina has a hard time because she sees a Grisha who has been on this terrible drug, and they have to kill him, and she, like, requires that they bury him in, like, the hard-packed snow.
This is the point where there's some tension about, like, Nina and Matthias at this point, and then this is the point where the author's like, oh no, too much tension. Let's make sure that they're friends now. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't keep that tension towards more of the end of the book. Because they both decide, like, hey, we're gonna kill this Chinese guy when we find him.
They both, because she's like, I can't let this guy put Grisha at risk and do that to other people. I need to kill him. And then Matthias is also like, and he makes Grisha even more powerful. I need to kill him. And they're both like, for Ravka, for Fjorden. And they're like, we'll make sure that he doesn't get out alive. You know, and so they're now on the same team, working on a separate plan than everybody else.
One of the weakest aspects of this book, in my opinion, is the development, quote unquote, of Nina and Matthias's relationship. I see what she's, like, wanting to do, I think, but it's not executed well at all. Nina's perspective chapters are actually, like, fairly okay. Like, I like them just fine, but Matthias has seemed very bipolar from what he is, like, seen to be doing versus his actual inner thought and dialogue. He's significantly more hateful from other people's perspectives, and he's significantly more like in love with Nina.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. That too. In his own mind. And so when these things happen, such as this truce that they come to with each other, like, I see how that would work at this point. But I don't feel from either one of their perspectives, they have been able to make a bridge to get to that point.
I should actually say really quickly that actually I'm going to take back what I just said. I actually did like the idea of the two of them suddenly deciding like, okay, we can put our beef to rest for a moment, in that we are both soldiers and our purposes are aligned. But like, what would actually happen after this? There is no world where we could live together after this moment. And that creates emotional stakes around what's going to happen. Like, what is the fallout after this moment? But they can connect on being soldiers. And I think that would have been really interesting, but it's not in the book.
They infiltrate the prison. While they're infiltrating the prison, they see a tank. Save that for later, just in cases. And they go, and part of the plan is that Inej is supposed to climb up the thing. Nina and Matthias are supposed to look upstairs to see if the guy that they're trying to get is held in the prison. But instead, Kaz goes with Nina up like 5-6 flights of stairs. Again, shouldn't be able to do that, but he does it because he's looking to see if Pekka Rollins is still alive. He goes and he finds Pekka Rollins, and then it cuts, so you're like, ooh, does he kill him? Because this whole time he has wanted revenge on Pekka Rollins.
I was gonna be very fucking disappointed in him if he had killed him. I was like, oh my god, come on, you cannot tell me Kaz is that dumb of a character. He was just built up as this chess master finesser, and he's gonna go murder this dude and ruin literally. That's where my belief started draining. And then, but that's because of the perspectives.
But also, it makes no sense that he wouldn't kill Pekka Rollins after he fucked the mission to go find Pekka Rollins. Like, it just, I don't, this book is gonna look in your face and say, he wants revenge, but death isn't too good. He wants to take everything Pekka owns and make him beg for mercy and money and make him a pauper like he made them. And apparently that's better than just, I don't know, killing him. So he literally frees him. Spoiler. Anyway. So he goes and does that. Nina is like, where the fuck is Kaz? She goes to find him. Ends up, some guards find her. She makes them pass out. But the one, as he falls, his gun goes off. So now everybody knows they're there. This yellow alarm goes off. Meanwhile, down in the incinerator had been run that day when they thought, in the afternoon, when they thought it was only run in the morning. So it is very warm still inside the incinerator. So Inej has to scale a hot incinerator thing. This shouldn't have happened unless her hands are fucking like
fireproof,
just
calluses.
This incinerator is so hot that they drop a piece of cloth down, and like a few feet down, it burns in the middle of the air before it hits the coals.
The rubber on her shoes starts to melt. I'm sorry, if the rubber on your shoes is starting to melt, your hands are now like finger crisps. Like, that's what's going on.
She's wearing leather gloves. It's not
the leather gloves would crisp.
Well, and also they have holes in the fingers. Remember?
I know.
They mentioned that so that he can feel things. But anyway, you guys are missing the best part, which is that this is her moment of character growth. This is the moment. This is the deep, dark night of the soul. It's so weird how, you know what it's like? It's like in the Dark Knight Rises where he's going up the whole thing and he's climbing up. And you're like, but like, at least that had something to do with Batman's character, where this is just a physical exertion that she's now thinking about and is now changing her view, and like, she's decided she's gonna push through.
Yeah, and also, why is this the moment she decides she's gonna go after slavers?
Yeah, it's so dumb.
It would make so much more sense to see the Grishas captured, or to see like some other people being taken by slavers and be like, this is what I'm going, like, for her to come out of. So it would make more sense is if she came out of this physically terrible situation, she came out of it and she was like, I am strong, I can do anything, and then at a later point went, you know what, I'm fucking going after slavers. I can do anything.
Actually, you know what would have been better if she saw how somehow the underworld of Ketterdam was complicit in the slave thing, and she realizes, oh no, I can't stay here with my family. My family is complicit in this thing I hate. I must, you know.
Yes. So I thought that was basically what Leigh Bardugo was trying to say without saying it well.
Also, why didn't they just, because what's-her-face worked for the White Rose, why didn't they just smuggle... why didn't they just ask the White Rose to smuggle Nina and Inej in as White Rose?
I already thought about that. Yes, I know. I was going to completely forget about that, but
the thing is, like, because they mentioned, at the same point when they mention the prison, they say there will be dancers, performers, and women coming in from Kirsch.
I thought that was going to be the next part. I literally thought he was going to suggest the White Rose send them.
Or, like, strike a deal with what's-her-face. How much more interesting would Inej's story have been
I was about to
if
say
they
that.
had struck a deal with the menagerie and said,
Yes.
hey, don't worry about what's happening. I will give you this much money to take these girls in with you, you know? And also, what's-her-face, like, and then for the plan to be for them to have to change what's-her-face's face beforehand. Like, why? I don't understand why their idea was prison.
I don't either. Maria, I'm so glad you brought that up because I just remember thinking
dumb.
when he was talking to her, Nina in her room at the White Rose, I was like, oh, so that's why he's asking her. Because one, she knows Matthias, but two, she works for the White Rose. So they're going to go in as like high-end prostitutes.
And they think all the other people died on the ship who knew Nina as a Grisha. Like, it's a brilliant, and that is a much better, oh shit, we didn't realize this other person was alive and would recognize her, problem. Like, that is way better as a like, oh man, look at this wrench in the machinery.
And exactly, and you also already have that pre-built-in moment, since we're all going to be from Matthias's perspective in our rewrite, where Nina has to wear revealing clothes, so Matthias has to deal with the part where he sees her boobies.
And also, we get to see him see his old mentor who he thought was dead immediately from his point of view. We don't see it from Nina's, and then cut to him noticing Broom.
I feel like it was supposed to be this.
Yes! Like,
Yeah, there should have been actual emotional stakes and complexity going on. Part of the problem is that Bardugo is not willing to deal with the fact that Matthias is not a good person if he actually believes all the things he should believe. And so it's mostly just like, again, like he's a normal guy who like maybe was kind of racist in his past and is maybe like a little racist now, but whatever. He doesn't have strong feelings about like the brotherhood he worked with or his mentor. His mentor is also a cartoonish character. That's another problem she has.
Oh my
all
God.
her bad characters are so cartoonish.
Dude.
why didn't they make him complex? Why didn't they make Broom
He's so
complex?
dumb. He is so cartoonishly evil. He literally twirled a mustache at one point by saying, oh, you want me to push this button?
But not just that. Also, that moment where Matthias has been like, the things that he had done had always been hard for him, but he realized in this moment that for Broom, it had been a pleasure. That shouldn't have been it. It should have been, like, he looked at Broom, saw his humanity, still loved him as a person, but had to make this choice that he had come to. How much more impactful would that have been, rather than just Broom being like, yes, indeed, I am heckin' evil. Like,
or it could have actually played into maybe themes of Matthias's journey, where the Fjordans, one of the reasons they're against witches is because they have very rigid roles in society, and that's why their gender roles are rigid. And so rigidity is something that he favors, but having to go be with the crows and work through this thing, he has become less rigid, and he meets his mentor again, but he realizes he has changed, that his mentor is too rigid. He keeps too much to these things, and he cannot change. Versus just being like, well, we were morally debunked the whole time.
Hope to Dust says, I missed what happened. Why is Katie on the floor? You
None of
missed
us
Katie
know.
dying.
I think I
None
broke
of
my
us
wheel.
know.
That's hysterical.
In the world where we have Matthias as our main perspective, Inej's elucidation to this fact that she wants to go hunt down slavers would work super well if there was another Suli girl or something like that, or another girl from another country. Suli is her, like, race,
Where
I
she's
guess,
from,
basically.
yeah.
Romani Indians.
If she did go to the ice palace or whatever as a menagerie, like Hur, and one of the other girls, the fill-ins, was, or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been an easy flashback to who she was, and being underneath her, what's her name again? The lady who owns
Helen
the
something.
Helene.
Helene.
Yeah, to be under Helene's control, because that PTSD moment she has where she would be beaten naked in front of her. Wild. Like, yeah, that makes sense. So I just feel like that also would have worked even more so in tune.
You're totally right. That should be the turning point of her character. I don't understand why this Dark Knight Rises thing is the turning of her character.
Point of her character. But anyway, so she gets up. Everybody else goes up on the roof, but the alarm is going off, which ruins the other part of their plan. So this is the moment where they decide, actually, we're going to smuggle the girls in as prostitutes for the menagerie. And again, why didn't you just do this from the beginning and make sure that people were on your... And then, like, Helene could have tried to betray them, and then that's when Inej had to deal... Like, it just would have worked so much better. But anyway, so Tanta Helene. But anyway, so they do the thing, the girls go in, and then Waylon and Jesper have to go to this bridge and make the bridge fuck up so that it shows a black thing so people get locked in different places and it allows them to get freed. And then
Waylon and Jesper are useless characters. I hate them. They should have died by getting hit by a train. Go ahead.
Kaz and Matthias have to go on the secret path for how to get into the ice court place.
They did their job.
What job?
The job of falling in love. They were the slow burn that everyone was waiting for.
Who gives a shit? Neither of them are actually even really people. Their flirting is not good. They don't tell you anything about the world or the other characters or their relationships, and they don't even have arcs. Jasper's the same person at the end as he is at the beginning, and we learn that Waylon has dyslexia. Plot twist.
They make this plan. Kaz and Matthias go in through like a secret entrance to this other place, and they have to they get guard uniforms and they dress up like Druskella. Nina and Inej are immediately come up with the problem where they don't think Inej is who she's supposed to be. Nina gets in by virtue of boobs. And so Nina goes into the party on her own.
She's 17, but go ahead. I would just like to note how much shit a male author would get if he did this with a 17-year-old girl.
So Inej has to just hang back. And then while Nina's at the party, this guy that she thought was dead, who'd been one of the people who captured her and who's known to be super rough to Grisha, Broom is there, and she decides, so he comes up to her and she's like, okay, I guess I'll use him to try find out where Boyul Bayor is being held. That's the guy they're supposed to capture or get out of the situation. But he's like, ha ha ha, I knew you were Grisha, I recognized you, and Matthias, it won't be me that'll get my revenge, it'll be Matthias. And then Matthias comes and he's like, ha ha ha, how did you think I could ever work for you? And Nina's like, no, I have been captured.
I was so angry. I didn't like that Leigh Bardugo made this seem like it was a real twist for a hot second, because I was like, no, what? Where is this?
That's what I'm saying. We were just in his point of view. We know this is not what's happening.
And she writes it as if you're supposed to believe it, and then in the next scene, Matthias is like, tee, because it would have been it would have worked better as a thing if Nina was like, oh, thank God Matthias is here. He's like, I got this, Or
it's because, again, she's doing it from a visual media perspective, because from a visual media perspective, we would have seen the scene and been like, oh no, Matthias turned Flag or
to the dark side.
Yes, exactly. But through Nina's perspective, she should have been thinking about this the whole time.
So then we go to Matthias's point of view, and he's like, actually, I'm just trying to trick this guy. And then he knocks out his, and he has this conversation with his, and again, if this whole story had been from his point of view and we'd been in his head, watching him become less rigid, having a conversation with a man that he truly loves, but realizes is too rigid and will never open himself up to different perspectives. And despite the fact that as a Fjerdan, he's not a bad guy, Matthias, he wasn't a bad person, but he unfortunately cannot grow past these rigid structures and then have that heartbreaking moment where he has to knock him out and lock him up. That's a great moment.
Or how great when all of this is happening and he's building back up, hey, oh, father figure, basically, right? Mm-hmm. I'm back. And I would love that moment where he doubts what he wants and he thinks to himself, oh, I'm home. And is welcomed and everything. And the more he sees, how it's constantly in the book, it constantly from his perspective says every time he's home, it feels like an inverse of it looks like looking at his home through a fucked up mirror. or something, basically. And it's like, it feels very strange, his perspective now of his home. How much more impactful would that have been if he just kept seeing all of the harshness of the like regime there and everything, and then having that moment where Nina's being locked in and he's like thinking to himself right prior to that moment how happy he is, how he feels vaguely comfortable, but simultaneously there's like this nugget of discomfort, like
you can't ever really go home.
I also think having a scene where like maybe when Broom first talks to him, he sits him down, he gives him something warm to drink.
Yeah,
he's sitting by the fire.
That's
There's
literally
these
what
other
I'm thinking.
men around him.
That's literally what I'm thinking.
For a moment, he feels as he felt, but then he like looks up and he's like, I can never come back here. This exists. This space exists, but I will never fit this role again. Like,
and he's angry, and that
a building scene Roman.
And that could combo with his anger towards Xena, but also his love towards Xena. He's angry that his relationship with her has allowed him to see this, but simultaneously he is very happy that he has been. So it's like, you know, like the converted holy man type of thing. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. There could be a lot more weight there, but Angry Outer says, no, see, Bardugo can't do that because she is a hack. I mean, I don't even necessarily disagree, but I think she just is only interested in the set dressing.
She's not a hack.
I don't know if you've been reading Angry Outer stuff, but Bardugo is on their list.
I know. I can tell. There is a bit of cross to bear there, but I personally have no ill will, and I see so many nice little, like, I just see somebody who's not quite making it. And that's fine. At least you're selling and stuff, but you haven't attained the status of someone who can write a truly good book.
I don't think she ever will, honestly. I think she makes enough money doing this that she's gonna stagnate. I think Ninth House is...
It depends on her.
Well, I don't know. I just don't think the publishing industry right now is set up to...
Yeah, that's true.
...help authors. But we need to finish in the plot in the next 5 minutes, so Maria, hit me.
They basically... He gets Nina out. They go off. There's this point where... they think they've been captured, like they walk into a group of people because the bells are going, because Jesper and Waylon got the thing, and it's like the black coat and everything's like, but then it's actually Kaz, and he was dressed up like a Druskella, and he like is like, ha ha ha. And then also they I forgot to mention this, they found Yul Bayor, but actually it's his son, because the actual guy they came to find is dead, and they've been trying to use his son to recreate the formula, and he kind of knows it, but they're like, blow up
because
the lab.
Because he too, the son is Grisha, and then the shoe father was like,
Yul Bayor was also a Grisha. He was a fabricator.
And he was like, I don't want us to have to suffer through this curse, quote unquote. So, like, let's damp it down. But instead of damping it down, the drug ended up amplifying or something like that, to that effect.
And Matthias is like, no, we can't kill him. He's one of us. And it's like, oh, Nakama.
Yeah, but also, like, where did that come from, Matthias? Like, what the fuck?
Because he also has lost... There was something I was watching.
So stupid.
What was it? Oh, in Guardians of the Galaxy, when he's like, we're all losers. And he's like, and by that I mean we've all lost something. And it just, it kind of felt like that, where he's like maybe in that moment he realized this is also someone who has lost a lot. Like, but anyway, it just kind of reminded me of that.
Well, it would have been an interesting reflection of the rigidity thing we were talking about, but not there. Go ahead.
And they've got the kid, and they're like, all the Druskella are like, give us back that kid, and we'll kill you either way. And then, but Kaz is there, and he takes off the hood, and he gets them, and there are these little pills that they have to take that make them breathe underwater for 10 minutes. And like, there's a sacred tree in the middle of this like island that they're on, and he like brings it down, and underneath it is not dirt, it's a spring. Like, there's no dirt. You just turn the tree, and then it's just immediate spring.
That's why I don't understand that little part. But, like, see, look, Leigh Bardugo could have sold me on that if she had slowed down, because she had the time to slow down, because she cut down perspective, to slow down in that moment, to describe the physical qualities of this area in a way that foreshadows the fact that...
Oh, like maybe it's kind of weirdly warm there, and they're like,
yes!
oh, this is... Like, so it's a hot springs that's keeping the whole thing warm? Yeah.
Now, she did mention it was warmer.
It's not a hot springs, though. That's the thing.
No, it's not.
A springs.
But
so,
the
like,
point
it doesn't
is
even...
like maybe the tree was actually dead. like, and it wasn't growing, and we stopped to linger on the fact that it's like a wilted tree.
Oh, and they noticed that the leaves on it are painted. They're not actual leaves. And it's like, oh, the whole thing is a charade. And Matthias is like, the thing at the center of my universe, like, it has been a lie. And he thinks, no, but part of being a spring, which is my god, is that life springs anew. And so then he destroys the old tree so that a new one can
There
grow.
you
He
go.
realizes
Oh,
it.
he's the one that does it. Oh,
Yeah.
that would have been so much better.
Also, that kind of moment, because what you're doing is you're denying us, because Kaz is the one who figures out that it's not dirt under this tree, it's a spring that they can access. But we don't get the moment where Kaz realizes it. Like, there's never the aha moment, which is actually important, because how you put stuff together like that is important to the reader, because then you need to lead the reader to how you got to that conclusion. Because how it actually works is Kaz was like, his guess was right. He figured it out, and, you know, he put it together, and people... The tree talked to them, and that was just the water underneath. And I'm like, people know what rushing water sounds like.
I did like his monologue in and of itself. I think that was a really awesome piece of like prose that, I mean, not awesome, but I really liked it. I liked the cadence of it. I liked the whole thing. But again, same thing you just said. Okay, come on now. Like, if the water's that near, you would know it's rushing water or something like that. Like, why? Like, how much better would it have been if we had had it from Matthias and he was like, the voice of Gel, which is their god. The voice of Gel is the voice of water. And so it's like, oh yeah, no shit. Like, there's water underneath.
Dive into the water. They have stuff that makes they can breathe underwater for 10 minutes. They get out. Meanwhile, Inej is captured and she's being taken to a guardhouse. And they're like, Tanta Helene is like, she's not a part of my menagerie. She's an imposter. You should take her to the prison. And they're taking her back to prison. And then Wylan and Jesper come and they were like, oh, hey, did you get the diamond?
And they make a drill! They make a drill!
Out of diamonds. But, like, the whole point is she was supposed to, like, not go into the party and she was supposed to get some diamonds and, like, she was supposed to get herself arrested so they could bring her back into the prison so they could drill into the giant glass wall that has the tank in it. Then they drive the tank out of the thing across a bridge, blow up a bridge.
I had to re-listen to this 3 times because I thought I missed plot beats, and I didn't.
You
No,
did it.
Kaz, Matthias, and Nina have already, like, on foot, kind of, or once they got off of the river that they were in with the Kue, who's the Suli boy they rescued. So then the tank comes and they're like, oh, what is that? And Kaz is like, ha ha ha. And then they blow up the bridge and they're like, now they can't get us because there was a bunch of reinforcements coming after, like, there was other tanks coming after their tank.
For some reason, I imagined it in Avatar. You know how the Fire Nation has
literally.
tanks? For some reason, that's how I imagined it.
Yes, I imagined very, very, very cartoonish, like little, we got it.
And then at this point, they're like, oh no, we're outnumbered. We're gonna go down fighting. There was also an earlier point where they were all like, oh, this is my family. I didn't.
Yeah, because there's a moment they think they've succeeded, and they're like, let's go to the dock and get on our ship. And they're like, we did it. Jesper's like, we did it. And then as they get to the dock, they see it's filled with ships. It should be empty, but it's filled. A whole flippin' armada of 200 men. You know? and then they also they bring out a Grisha Heartrender who's on Jerda Parem. And so that guy's gonna fuck him up. But then Nina, in that moment, realizes there's only one thing to do. She turns to to Kue and is like, "Do you have any of the Parem?" And he's like, "Yeah, I do." She's like, "Give it to me." And Kaz and Matthias are like, "No, Nina, don't do it. You're going," because there was a point where they heard that, like, you potentially some people don't get addicted on the first try, like their first dose. It takes till the second dose to get addicted. And she's like, "I'm a gamble," and she like takes it down. And she just so this is the one moment where there's an actual problem that Kaz did not account for. And it is dealt with by Nina making a sacrifice instead of Kaz having to. Because, like, in this moment, with Kaz and all of his shit, there needs to be a moment where Kaz deals with his, that he is fallible as a human, and he's the one dealing with it. And no, Nina's the one that gets him out of here and has to take, like, this terrible drug.
honestly, it should have been that Kaz injected her with the drug, because that is that's like a genuinely morally gray, not great thing to do. It makes what's going to happen to her later worse in a lot of ways because it's a violation. It would complicate the dynamics of the group, but it also would have been like, oh yeah, no, this was his last contingency plan if things went really wrong. Having her do it doesn't feel very interesting in a lot of ways.
It even could have been halfway where, like, nobody else thinks of it, and then Kaz is like, Nina. And he's the one who asks. And Nina's like, oh, shit, you're right. And everybody's like, no. And Kaz is like, Nina, it's the only way. How else are we going to get out of here, Nina? And Nina's like, yes. Because at least that way it gives her some agency, but it also puts Kaz in a very morally gray area as well.
No. She had to have her elfin-laid moment.
Yes.
Like, you know, she had to, like, come out and, like, be the Terminator. You know what I mean?
It's just not written very interestingly. Like, it should be so interesting to gain all power in that way, and she doesn't.
Move. Stop.
So she stops a bunch of soldiers' hearts. They all die.
None of them die.
The soldiers do.
No, she puts them all to sleep.
And then she knocks out. And the Druskella, she also doesn't, because Matthias asks her not to kill them. And she doesn't even kill Broom. She just makes him bald.
Which I think is funny, actually.
They get on the ship, and she has, like, 2 hours before she's going to be, like, withdrawals, not good.
It sounds like she's on shrooms or something.
Yeah, Kaz and Inej have a conversation where he's like, don't go. Because Inej basically told him earlier, like, I'm leaving. I once we get the money, I'm leaving and I'm gonna go fight slavers. And he's like, don't go, Inej.
I didn't like that.
Yeah. And she's like, what do I have to stay for, Kaz? And he's like, I want you. And she was like, how will you have me, Kaz? With fully clothed with gloves on?
She was so really weirdly mean. Like, where the fuck did that come from?
Also, as someone who was used as a prostitute at a young age, the idea of maybe someone who doesn't have a really strong physical relationship might not necessarily be a terrible one.
Pause.
It should be something that they deal with later.
That took me completely out of believing in, like, a lot of things from there on out. But it felt so out of pocket for her to fucking say that. And how nasty was that to say that?
I didn't like it. It felt weirdly like
bitchy as fuck cunty.
She had planned this ahead of time as a deconstruction of the emotionally withdrawn male, but like it in practice, it just feels kind of mean because this is his first step towards it. It's not like they've had a relationship where this has been a problem for a while.
Wait, but even worse, she literally is saying immediately after that interaction, just say one thing and I'll stay. Like, he just said it.
He said the thing.
Yeah, that's the weird bit.
And when you touched him earlier, he didn't pull away, and you saw that he was uncomfortable, but he stayed. He let your hand stay, so he's obviously willing to work on it. This was just such a weird.
Earlier in the novel, she says, like, I think one or two times, she just is like, all I need is this tiniest little sign from you that, like, this is not, like, you're not just using me as a tool, basically. And he does it, and then she immediately becomes, like, a hot, scorching bitch. Like, I don't understand.
Oh, you know what would have been a better conflict? If he had injected Nina,
yes!
and then she realizes, oh, no, you do see people as tools. There is an ugliness there. Do you see me like that, despite everything that I thought we were building?
And that's what causes her to distance herself, and it has nothing to do with his problems with touching. Again, as someone who... Anyway, so that happens, and then, like, they get back to the place. They contact Van Eck to be like, let's do the deal. Van Eck meets with them on this, like, island in the middle of nowhere, and is like, here's your money. And then, like, but like, haha, I'm gonna take the Sully boy, Kue, and we're just gonna kill you. And they have, like, Grisha, who are on Jorda Paran, who are, like, tide makers, and they're gonna, like, kill them. And then Van Eck goes to destroy the boat, and Kaz is like, no, your son is on that boat. And he stops, and he's like, my son? My shitty-ass son? And Kaz is like, I saw your letters.
That can't read, and that's why I hate it.
Yes. Even though he's smart enough to make, like, a ton of other stuff and do things. Like,
he can make a drill from scratch with a diamond to drill through
fabricator glass,
which is like, phew, and it's like, no, he can't read his ABCs. Like,
and the other thing is, it ties into none of the themes of Grisha. like in the novel. It's not like, oh, he was against the Grisha and the guy was like there. It should have been tied in some way thematically to the rest of the questions that are going on, or should have been going on in the book, but aren't because the book isn't very good. But like no, and it's just random. I mean, I did like how spiteful he is, constantly writing him letters. I thought that was funny, but like it makes no sense. It's great.
Anyway, he destroys the boat. Bam! And they're like, oh no. And then they were like, he was like, well, I have what I need. And Kaz is like, actually, you don't. That's not Kue. And then Wylan starts speaking out of the face of Kue, and you find out that no, one of the last things Nina did before she went into withdrawals while she was still super powerful was she face changed Wylan into Kue. So Kue, Nina, and Matthias are elsewhere, hidden away, and in that moment, what's his face? Van Ack grabs the money and is like, aim for Brecker! But then Kaz does a bad, and he turns to look at Inej to make sure she's safe.
Which is so dumb!
Yes.
He never has done that before!
He's so controlled. Anyway, and he does that, and in that moment, Van Ack realizes, actually, take the girl too. She can be our bargaining chip.
That's so
and
dumb!
He was like, you have a week to get me my guy back. Otherwise I will torture her, and you'll be screwed. And then they're like, oh no, this is such a heckin' low time. Jesper's mad at some stuff, but then you also find out that Jesper is the reason that Pekka Rollins knew about some things, because Jesper talked about coming into big money at a gambling den before they left. But anyway, everything's good. And then Kaz has to go to Pekka Rollins, who is alive, who also made it back to
from prison
before they did, because obviously he released him. He got back and was comfortably at home. Like, he should have gone home 2 days beforehand, but it feels like he's been home like a couple of weeks.
Happened, like, my brain registered that in the background, and I was like, why does it feel like he's been here the whole time?
Right? Anyway, and he's like, I saved your life, Pekka, and because Pekka was like, I got you, bro, and Pekka doesn't, like, Rollins doesn't realize that, like, he's Kaz's greatest mortal enemy, and Kaz is like, I need 200,000 Kruger and, some other stuff, and I will give you, my share in the little
Crow Club
and the
shipping container
shipping yard place that Kaz has control of, and Pekka's like, that's a great deal, I'll take it, goodbye. And then he's also like, man, sorry, so this last chapter is from Pekka Rollins' point of view, but Rollins is like
an Irish dude,
but he's also like, Kaz, the ice court place was gonna be easy because they didn't know you were coming, but Van X has got your number. Good luck. And then he realizes Kaz stole his watch, his wallet, so his tie pin, like a bunch of other stuff, and he was like, actually, Van Eck, are you okay, my dude? And, like, that's how it ends.
So from a comedic standpoint, I was like, what the fuck? I loved it, but it was not in a good way. Like, kind of like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, that kind of way.
Yeah, the thing about it is, like, it's like, this is supposed to be the ultimate object of Kaz's revenge, and you've just turned him into a buffoon. Like, Pekka Rollins is not, like, a worthy adversary, and so it just feels kind of dumb. And takes away any kind of mystique or power he might have. Like, in the show, he's kind of scary because he's played by a kind of scary actor and, like, screws with people. All right, so Maria has a hard out in 10 minutes. So, last thoughts, Maria.
It was fine. A lot of people enjoy this book, I think, and I think a lot of people really like it because compared to Shadow and Bone, it is...
Oh, compared to this blows Shadow and Bone literally out of the water for me. I hate Shadow and Bone.
I think that people like this because they don't have very good taste. I thought that overall, I'm sorry, this is another one of those books that makes me, like, just despair for humanity a little bit. It's fine. It's the lower end of fine. This is the bare minimum that a book should be bad.
It's good.
In my opinion, no book should be worse. Like, this is it. This scrapes by. I don't, like, you have to take remedial writing classes, but you're still allowed to write after this.
Shut the fuck up. No, it's not that bad.
One thing we haven't mentioned, the action throughout is extremely glacial. I was so uninterested in what was happening in the plot, in the actual thing. There's no character arcs. This goes back to her thinking about these characters and liking them in isolation, but then not actually in motion. again, Inej's character arc just happens while she's climbing a ladder. Kaz doesn't have one, even though the setup for the sequel is kind of interesting. Matthias kind of has one, but like not. We don't understand the motivation of it. Nina doesn't have one.
She's in the same place.
Wyland and Jesper are completely useless. I don't even understand why they're part of the plot.
Their best character arc is they like each other better.
I just really like Science Fantastic's comment. A lot of people probably read it as teens. Let them enjoy it and then mature.
I mean, again, we've read very good YA.
If you read all of the Shadow and Bone trilogy and then you got to this, you were probably like, wow, his art, you know? Like...
Again, like I said before, I wouldn't, like, if I really love something, I'll probably reread it at some point. I will not reread this, but I did like it a lot.
And I think for a lot of people, it is going to hit sweet spots for them.
Yeah.
So I happen to know that, like, with Cindy, really loved this book. And, again, she did not like the Grisha books at all. And so it's just, I think that for some people, this is just going to hit, like, I think this is better than ACOTAR and like those kinds of things. So of the books that people think are really good, I think this is the least egregious of them. But for me, it's just like, there's so many problems and so many, like, so much missed potential. And again, it just feels like this author just could not pick whose story she wanted to tell, so she tried to tell. It's too many things.
I will say Leigh Bardugo has one more book coming out this year, or has a book coming out this year that's like a historical romance, which looks interesting. But after that, I'm done with her as a writer. I just don't think she's going to improve past this. And her books are messy, but not in a way that I find interesting. Even parts of Ninth House I liked more than this. And the other thing I think that helps this book not feel terrible and be better than some of the other bad books we read is it's shorter. Like, this is like a normal sized book, whereas those tend to be at least 6 to 8 hours longer, measured by Audible. And so, like, it feels very long, but it's relatively short.
About 15
I'm not interested
hours.
in reading the sequel. Yeah, I'm not interested in reading the sequel at all. I kind of know some of the stuff that happens, and that really makes me not interested in it. Katie,
Oh, God.
are you interested in the sequel?
Oh, no, absolutely not, because I don't trust her enough to do it. Like, I don't trust her to give me the Kaz I want. This ending was such, like, again, ever since they entered the prison and onwards, she lost my trust as a writer for the narrative, and I lost... You know, like, when I watched Mad Max Fury Road for the first time, my, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a phrase where you...
Suspension of
World was
disbelief.
shaken.
Thank you, Maria. God, I love your mind reading with me. But yeah. No, I don't trust her well enough to give me something that I'll be happy with in the next book.
I think that's very fair. That's kind of how I feel about her as an author.
I would be more interested in reading the sequel to Ninth House than this.
I'm more interested in going and finding some Nina and Matthias fanfic. Okay, all right. Thanks, guys, for joining us. This has been great. All right, bye, guys.
Bye, guys!